brain fog. Said I got a bad case of brain fog. So I'ma take my butt home. So I'ma take my butt home.
At this point, based on what happened last night, do you know anything better about it now than you did last night?
No. They've got people everywhere looking for them. I mean, you can hear the helicopters are there, and but they haven't seen anything, and it's crazy. And it's been since 9 o'clock last night, and I really thought that when it got daylight they would find them just in a heartbeat, but I haven't.
Was there anything about the demeanor of the man that gives you concern?
No, in fact, when he made me get out of the car, I tried to get my children. I just begged him, please let me take them. And he said no, he didn't have time because they were in car seats and it was going to take time for me to get them out of the car seat. And he just told me, he said, but I won't hurt them. And he just took off. But he had a gun, and my big thing is they were screaming, hollering, crying, and I'm just scared that he just lost his patience or something, Yeah, I don't know. All I'm doing is just praying and just keeping my faith that they're going to be okay.
You've never seen this guy before?
No, sir. Never.
And he just came out of the blue?
I was stopped at a red light, and I was looking this way, looking toward the left, and it was just like, in a second, he was in my car. He just opened the car door, and I just screamed. I said, what are you doing? He just shut up and drive, and he had a gun, and he was poking it in my side, and told me to drive. And so I drove, and I was trying to ask him one time, why, what do you want? Please just, don't hurt me or the children. He said, and he never said anything. All he ever told me was, shut up or I'll kill you. He said, don't say anything else. And my children were crying, and I was trying to tell them, that it was okay, that, don't worry. And he would, and he let me talk to them. And then we just got maybe 3 or 4 miles down the road, and he told me, he said, I want you to stop. And I said, stop right here? He said, yeah, stop right here. And it was just in the middle of the road. And I stopped, and he told me to get out, and I was in the driver's side, he was in the passenger side, and so I opened the door. I said, I'm going to get my children before I go. He said, no, you can't. He said, I don't have time for that. He just, and sort of pushed me on out the door, helped me get on out the door, and he slammed the door and took off. And I ran to the closest house that I could. And
I'm really sorry.
And the Academy Award goes to Susan Smith in her 1994 news interview about her children going missing. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. We're talking about Susan Smith today. Do you guys remember when that Susan Smith thing happened? I do. I was in high school at the time. And that 3 minutes that we just watched together was all over every news station across the country. Susan Smith was a 23-year-old young mother of 2 in Union, South Carolina. And she decided that she didn't want to be a mom anymore. So what did she do? Instead of giving custody to her soon-to-be ex-husband, she had filed for divorce the month before, by the way. She decided to murder her 2 young children. Now, instead of, letting people know that she did that, she let the world search for those two boys for 9 days before she said anything. And that's what we're going to get into today. And she was up for parole this past Wednesday, and we're going to watch the all of this to lead up to us watching that parole hearing together. So, how's everybody doing today? I see some familiar faces in the chat. Number 2, good to see you. Christo, always a pleasure. Saffron, welcome. Yo, Mama. Always good to see you, Mom. By the way, don't forget, Yo Mama is my mama, so behave yourselves in the chat over there. Drunken Smurf, Ed, Chicago Emerald. Who else? Am I missing anybody? Major Victory. Frank. Thanks for stopping by, Frank. I think I saw Mr. Mimsy too. Possibly. I could be seeing things. I could be imagining things. Let's get into the next. I wanted to show you guys the search that happened. Like I said, for 9 days, for 9 whole days, she let people search for these kids. She said that she pulled up to a stoplight. She was on her way to a friend's house. By the way, that friend wasn't even home. The police obviously interviewed that friend. She pulled up to a stoplight, and a black man jumped into her car, held her at gunpoint, made her drive down the road, and then kicked her out of the car. Now, when the police looked into it a little bit, they found that that stoplight would not have been red if, as she said, nobody else was around to see this happen. Because it was one of those stoplights where on the main road, it just stayed green until the light sensed that somebody was waiting at the cross road. And then it would cycle through and give the main road a red light. And if nobody was around, that light would have stayed green. It would stay green all night. So they started to get a little suspicious of Susan. But for 9 days, they searched for those boys. Young Alex and Michael. Mr. Zed and I were going to drive up to Union, South Carolina to actually go to the area where this took place. We were planning on doing that, and then hurricane hit and kind of put a damper on those plans, right? So we did not end up going up there. Maybe in 2 years when she's up for parole again, we'll head up to Union and see the area, see the lake, all of that.
On Tuesday night, October 25th, a frantic call is received by the 911 dispatcher in Union County.
These are her children, and she jumped out of the car, and he took the car with the children, and he's headed toward Chester.
Some guy jumped into a red light with her car with her 2 kids in it.
Susan Smith says she'd been driving in her car in the town of Union with her 2 boys. At an intersection on Highway 49, she claims a black man with a gun jumped into her car. Several miles down the road, she says, the carjacker ordered her out and got away with her 2 sons, 3-year-old Michael and Alex, just 14 months.
He said, I want my mama. He said, Mama, where you going? And I told him, I said, baby, I gotta go, but you're gonna be okay. And I told him I loved him. I hollered I loved him. And then, the guy slammed the door and he took off. And I just felt like such a failure.
Susan Smith first goes to this home, the home where the 911 call was made, Rick and Shirley McLeod.
I've never seen anybody so hysterical, so out of control, so in anguish. I mean, she could barely talk. She could barely hold her body up, and I literally had to.
She's a very good actress, Miss McLeod. That's why she was so in anguish and could barely hold herself up. It's because she just finished murdering her children. That's why she was so hysterical.
Hold her in my living room and guide her through what she was really trying to tell me that took place. So
The next day, the search begins for the alleged suspect and the boys. Police put out a description of the man and for the burgundy protege he's said to be driving. Less than 24 hours after the reported abduction, the search goes nationwide. Sheriff Howard Wells coordinates the effort.
With daylight, hopefully we're going to find this vehicle today. We hope, we pray, but we're still waiting.
It's the dawn of a new day in Union, South Carolina, and still no sight of 2 little boys reportedly ripped away from their mother during a carjacking. It happened 2 days ago. Late last night, David Smith, the children's father, pleaded for help.
If you see anything suspicious, if you see a vehicle you think is the one that we're looking for,
please notify any form.
By the way, this is her husband that she had just filed for divorce from the month before. He is distraught. He is obviously distraught. And we're going to hear from him a little bit later in the show. This past Wednesday, he was at the parole hearing, making sure that they didn't let this monster out of prison.
Form of law.
I see a bunch of new people here, and I just wanted to say welcome and to let everyone know, if you like the show, please hit the like button. If you think it's worth sharing, please share. Around here, if anybody donates during the show, does a super chat or anything like that, my co-host over here, that's Zena, she's hiding her face, and Ava, who's laying upside down for some reason, they get a milk bone live on air. So that's what we do around here. We cover current and not so current true crimes, or crimes in general. Later on tonight, another announcement before we get back to this retro archive news footage. A little bit later tonight, I'll be over on KFAR's channel. We're not streaming to both channels like we do for KFAR, by the way, is my co-host for Booze and Body Cams on Wednesdays. But I will be over on his channel talking about some other drama, I guess. It's not a drama channel, I promise. But I will be over on his channel at 8 o'clock tonight. And on Wednesday's Booze and Body Cams, we will be taking a look at the Daniel Penny case.
Agency, and let them know.
Sheriff's Office, Jeff Lawson.
That plea has been answered. Hundreds of phone calls are flooding into the police in Union, some as far away as California and Maine.
We've had sightings for the vehicle. We've had sightings supposedly of the children. We've had sightings of the vehicle and the children. We've had sightings that still put them together. We've had sightings that did not. It's just a common type of information that you have to rule out everything you got.
But what hasn't been given is that solid clue that'll lead police to the carjacker and 3-year-old Michael Smith and his 14-month-old brother, Alex.
He's coming from Richmond, Virginia.
It's frustrating for police, but they persevere, and so does the community. Wendy Fowler hasn't even met the Smith family, but she says she felt obligated to help out by distributing flyers all over Union County.
I don't know if they're hungry, I don't know if they're wet, or whatever. It's just real hard.
This is the beginning of an exhaustive search by hundreds of people. Sled officers, deputies, the highway patrol, and helicopters are brought in. And friends and family begin organizing a search effort.
We're forming groups to go around the immediate area and distribute flyers that contains pictures of both the suspect and of the kidnapped children.
I have the kids on and I think of them all the time. You just want to look harder and harder, but you can only look so much.
Dan Parks gathered with other searchers at this command post, tired, dirty, and disappointed. Davidson County Sheriff Jim Johnson had just called off the search.
We're going to cease our operation here now. And
frustrating news after a lead that looked so promising. A fisherman thought he spotted the missing burgundy Mazda near Baden Lake. Later, a hunter told searchers he thought he heard a child calling out. Searchers, desperate for leads, descended on the area.
Come on, baby, we got it.
For 12 hours, they used dogs, all-terrain bikes, horses, and helicopters. For many, this had become an emotional effort that ended without a trace of the missing kids.
Volunteers spend hours searching every possible area. Yellow ribbons, symbols of hope, are tied all over the town of Union.
I could do just one thing to bring the babies back.
Then, 2 possible leads. A man fitting the description of the suspect robs a store in Salisbury, and police get a tip that the children are spotted around Baden Lake and Highway 49. But these leads fizzle, and attention turns to the parents. Court documents show the mother had filed for a divorce the week before, and that she had been granted permanent custody of the children during the separation.
We've had questions about her story. That's why we've talked to her more than one time.
More questions for the mother, Susan Smith. Sheriff officials say there have been differences about her whereabouts before and after the carjacking that left Michael and Alex Smith nowhere to be found. Father answered more questions from investigators as well, but so far the searches and questions have turned up with no answers.
The FBI confirms that Susan Smith took a lie detector test. News reports say she failed it, but no official confirmation.
You don't say. She failed the lie detector test? Holy cow. I found it interesting that they were searching all of these lakes and they turned out one of them obviously was the wrong lake, and the other one, they searched that John D. Long lake, I think twice, and didn't find the car. So I don't know.
And on this day, Susan and David release a video of Alex and Michael. And while the nation watches home video of a mother celebrating her son Alex's first birthday, hundreds of volunteers and law officers search on land, air, and water for the two boys. The search goes through the weekend with no trace of the boys or the car.
The horses led the search this time for 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alex Smith. So far, the searches have been fruitless, and investigators say any clue to help solve this case is needed.
Horses can go down in places and look in places and do more thorough checking than the people on foot.
Volunteers like Eddie Odell say they hope to bring an end to this tragedy. For these horsemen, it's a Sunday well spent and a cause well worth it.
Solely for the children. All I want to do is see them safely back home and back to their parents.
Today's search included the John D. Long Lake. It's been searched before, and frustrated investigators want to be certain that they haven't missed the missing Mazda.
Just muddy water, slick bottom, that's about it. There's nothing else down there, no rocks, a few beer cans, that's about it.
A search like this is very labor intensive. That's because visibility out there is only about 18 inches in front of the diver, and basically they're feeling their way around for a car. Every search anywhere in the county brings out the residents who say every attempt, no matter how repetitive, is worth it.
Whatever it takes, it doesn't matter. If they just find those two kids, it'll be worth it all.
Just think, 2 babies out there. It's a terrible thing.
The search today covered a lake in nearby Lockhart. It also included some wooded areas around Highway 49, the suspected getaway route.
Halloween Monday, and parents in Union are afraid for their own children.
Before this happened, I could let him even go out in the yard and play, and me sit in a house where I could just keep a close eye on him, but now I'm even afraid to do that.
And still, Sheriff Wells has no clues.
We focused in our county, but there's nothing we've had so far to draw us in whichever direction we need to go.
Then, almost a week after the boys disappeared,
So, I want to switch over to that interview that Susan did. First, let me show you this lake. Let me show you what she did first. So here's John D. Long Lake. And Union is just down the road here. She drove this long road all the way up here to this lake, and she took this cut through, and there used to be, back in 1994, a boat ramp right here that this road would lead to. And she drove her car up to the boat ramp with her kids strapped into their car seats in the back seat. She put the car in neutral, and she pushed it down the boat ramp. They did a recreation to see how long it would take for that car, that Mazda, to sink to the bottom of this lake. And it was 6 minutes. For 6 minutes, those 2 young boys were strapped in their car seats, could not get out. Even if they wanted to, could not get out, watching the water rise until there was no air left in that vehicle. And it was resting at the bottom of that lake. And she turned around and ran up this road and found a house. The woman that we saw in that interview earlier found a house and rang the doorbell and asked for help because somebody had kidnapped. There's the house. Somebody had kidnapped her sons, had carjacked her. A black man broke into her house or into her car and made her stop in the middle of the road and then took off. That's what she did. And then she had the audacity to get onto the news and beg for people's help to find them, to find her lost boys.
I think everybody knows who they are. I think everyone is aware. I think everyone is aware of who these two are. We have a lot of family members here today and a lot of friends who are here in support of Susan and David. I'm going to let them say what they have to say now.
First of all, I would like to say to whoever has my children that they please bring them home to us where they belong. Our lives have been torn apart by this tragic event. I can't express how much they are wanted back home, how much we love them, we miss them. They are our hearts. And who I have prayed every day, and there's not 1 minute that goes by that I don't think about these boys. And I have prayed that whoever has them, that the Lord would let him realize that they are missed and loved more than any children in this world. And that whoever has them, I pray every day that you're taking care of them, and know that we will do anything we will to help you to get them home back to us. I just can't express it enough that we just got to get them home. That's just where they belong, with their mama and daddy. Go ahead.
I would like to take the time to plead to the American public that you please do not give up on these two little boys in the search for their return safe home to us. That you continue to look for this car, these two, our children, and for the suspect himself, that you continue to keep your eyes open, and anything that you see that might would help, to please call and let it be known. We ask that you continue to pray for me and my wife and for our family, but most of all that you continue to pray, the American public, continue to pray for Michael and Alex, that they are returned home safely to their mother and father and the family members who love them so much, that you pray most of all for them, and that they are being taken care of, and that they are safe, and that they will return home safely.
I want to say to my babies that your mama loves you so much, and your daddy, this whole family's love you so much. And you guys have got to be strong, because you are, I just know, I just feel in my heart that you're okay, but you got to take care of each other. And your mom and daddy are going to be right here waiting on you when you get home. I love you so much. I want to tell a story. The night that this happened, before I left my house that night, Michael did something that he's never done before. He had his pooper in his mouth, and he came up to me and he took his pooper out. He put his arms around me and he told me, "I love you so much, Mama." And he's always told me he loved me, but never before, that, not without me telling him first. And that was just, I'm holding on to that so much, because it just means so much.
Is it just me, or are you guys getting angrier and angrier the more this woman speaks? I can feel my blood pressure rising the more that this woman talks. I know that this happened 30 years ago, but I'm angry all over again.
I love them. I just can't express enough. I have been to the Lord in prayers every day with my family and by myself with my husband. It just seems so unfair that somebody could take such two beautiful children. And I don't understand. I have put all my trust and faith in the Lord, that He's taking care of them, that He will bring them home to us. That's all. I don't say anything else.
Good luck, y'all. Good luck.
Thank you.
I'll answer a few questions now.
Margaret, find out that the lead was not going to be as promising as the first one we got here.
Because we know what ended up happening. We know.
From Washington State turned out to be unrelated.
The search took place here, inside and underneath Susan Smith's house. Across the street, Maude and Catherine Frost saw it all.
Looked like they took a box out the underneath the floor. It looked like it was a box or something.
What do you think of that?
He's got me puzzled.
She's not the only one, because the sheriff, Howard Wells, isn't revealing what was found.
I cannot comment on that. Maybe we will have some information later on in the day.
As the day unfolded, though, there was no official word about Michael and Alex Smith, where they are, or why they were allegedly taken by a carjacker. This morning, the boys' parents appeared on Good Morning America, though, calling the house search routine and praising investigators.
I don't think there's anything they haven't done that they could do. I've just put my faith in the sheriff.
But after 9 days, is the sheriff putting his faith in her?
In this case, until I determine who's a suspect, everybody's a suspect.
There is still plenty of support for the boys and their parents in town, but with federal officials confirming now, Susan Smith failed a polygraph for a second time this week. Others, even those who know her well, are having doubts.
It's got me all puzzled now, because she failed it 2 times, and there's something wrong somewhere or another.
A crush of people waited anxiously in Union tonight for crushing news.
Susan Smith has been arrested and will be charged with 2 counts of murder.
The murders of her own 2 boys, Michael and Alex Smith, whose disappearance 9 days ago captured the nation's attention. The same 2 sons Susan Smith pleaded for just this morning.
It's very hard. The hardest part is not knowing, just not knowing.
But authorities say Susan Smith did know. By 4 o'clock this afternoon, crime scene tape was going up around John D. Long Lake, 8 miles away, where submerged in murky water, divers found the missing car. And inside, presumably, the Smith children.
2 bodies were found in the vehicle's back seat. Identities are pending an autopsy.
As her story of a carjacking and abduction apparently unraveled, Susan Smith sat inside her grandparents' house until tonight, when the sheriff, who never publicly called her a suspect, laid the murders of her own 2 children squarely on her doorstep.
Smith is incarcerated at an undisclosed location.
Susan Smith. I don't want you guys to get the wrong idea about this sheriff. He's not a good guy in this situation. He ended up getting on the stand at her trial, and he happened to be a friend of the family of the Smiths. Keep in mind, this happened in Union, South Carolina. It's a very small town. Everybody knows each other. Everyone was friends. And for at least 50% of his testimony, he was like mitigating the responsibility that Susan had, talking about how her father had killed herself and she was molested, as if like all of these things that have nothing to do with her killing her own children. He decided to get on the stand and talk about.
Had been a suspect from nearly the beginning. State law enforcement officials here in South Carolina report that it was the inconsistencies in her story, as well as all of this media scrutiny, that led Susan Smith to crack and confess to killing her 2 young sons. Police tell us Smith watched as her Mazda protege rolled into John D. Long Lake. Investigators say the car floated for a while, then flipped over and sunk. Smith's children were strapped to their seats when the car went down.
I don't see how any mother could put their children in a lake and watch them go down and die.
Neither do police. A motive hasn't been figured out, and tonight investigators won't talk about Smith's confession, but townspeople are talking. Robert Sinclair's son Mitchell is a close friend of Smith's. Even he says he had no idea what she had done. Did Mitchell have any idea that the car was at the bottom of the lake? Did she believe him? Did he believe her?
Yeah, she had everybody voted.
I hugged my little boy, and I just couldn't believe that somebody could do that to their children.
Donna Atkinson is still wearing a pin with a picture of little Michael and Alex on it. She and hundreds of others packed the street in front of the Union County Sheriff's Department. People like Lisa and Henry Campbell had hoped for the best, but got the worst.
So we're going to do the super chat real quick, but Yo Mama brings up a good point. Wouldn't they have searched the boat ramp first? You would think, and I thought the same thing. And when you look at this lake, there's two boat ramps. There's this one that was here. It's not here anymore. And there's the one over here. I think they were searching more in this other area instead of, that doesn't really make sense either. Let me turn this right side up. She pushed him in over on this side. So I don't know if it just got buried in the mud. They said there wasn't like gravel or sand at the bottom of this lake. It was just all muddy. So maybe it was covered in mud and it had flipped over. So I'm not sure why they didn't find him on their first two searches. They had scuba divers and everything in this lake twice before they ended up finding the car. Real quick, thank you to Frank. By the way, extra special, not just for the super chat, but Frank, I believe, is the reason why I went over 5K this week. There's a couple of factors. I did go on the Horseshoes and Hand Grenades podcast, so that helped a little bit. Handy News, right handy over there at Handy News, was promoting my channel, so I appreciate him as well. But my friend Frank, I am so lucky to be able to call Frank a friend, did promote my channel on his very large platform. And not only did I go over 5K, I went well past 5K. So that's amazing. Thank you, Frank. I can't wait to see you in January. Frank and I will be in DC January 20th together in real life. We are in real life friends, and that's the next time I'm going to see him. Thank you for the super chat. It is snack time for sure. The terrorist Ava, if you notice, the normal comforter that's on this bed is not here because Mr. Zed and I went out last night and I did not close my office door, and somebody decided to unfluff the comforter that is normally on that bed. And you're looking at her right there, but we will give her a treat anyway. There you go. And my beautiful co-host Zena. I know you guys are actually here to see Zena and not me, so she gets a little screen time too. Here goes Zena. Thank you, Frank. I appreciate it. Yeah, if you like politics sort of stuff, if you keep up with that stuff, definitely go over to the Let's Be Frank channel. News No Enemy just linked it in the chat. Go subscribe to Frank. I think in January, he's going to be IRL streaming from DC. So I might do that a little bit, but there's not really crimes and stuff happening. So we'll see. You know, I always flip on that live stream anytime I'm out. Let's get back to this. There's a few minutes left, and then we're going to get into her prison record and then the parole hearing.
Tragedy. I mean, I have 2 children of my own, and for a mother, there's no reason on this earth for a mother to do that to her children.
I feel for her, I pray for her, and the rest of the family mostly, but my heart goes out.
Along with the anguish people feel for the toddlers, there is anger for Susan Smith, who said all along a black man had taken her children.
Everything come up that's wrong, everything come up that's bad, first thing to do is depict the black man as the epitome of evil.
A sad procession of patrol cars leads a tow truck away from John D. Long Lake. The muddy Mazda Protege carried into town. Hope the children might still be alive faded tonight with the sun. At sunset, investigators plunged into the murky water of John D. Long Lake, where they found the car. The same car Susan Smith said was carjacked was submerged less than a mile from where she reported the alleged crime. In the car, 2 children. Tonight, state investigators confirmed the terrible news. The bodies in the car were identified as 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alex. Authorities say this wasn't a carjacking at all. Instead, they say this was murder, and the woman they've arrested is the little boy's mother, Susan Smith. Sarah Jane Parks knows Smith. She cried tonight when she heard the news on the radio.
It's just hard to believe something like this could happen.
How do you feel about this, lady?
Any mother could do something like that.
A search that had prompted leads around the country, an international outpouring of sympathy for the children and their parents, ends just outside of town.
I think there's no audio on this part, by the way. So we're not missing anything. Okay. Let's move on to her trial. Just a short news segment about the trial. So she ends up going to trial. She's found guilty. In South Carolina in 1994, life didn't mean life. There was no such thing as a life sentence. You always had parole after 30 years. The prosecution was not allowed to tell the jury this. The jury had the option of life or death. There wasn't this life without the possibility of parole. 2 years later, that law changed. I would think in part because of this, because when the jurors were done and it was all over, they came out in interviews and said, we thought life meant life. We didn't know she was going to get paroled in 30 years. What is this all about? They didn't tell us that, which makes sense. The reason the jurors chose life instead of death is because they thought she was going to be there the entire rest of her life and would have to sit and think about what she did. And they thought that that was a worse punishment than the death penalty, which is why they gave it to her. And I believe all of them, if not the ones who spoke about it, every single one that spoke about it said that if they had known that there would have been a possibility of parole for Susan Smith, they would have chosen the death penalty in this case. I bet you guys are wondering why Susan did this. Well, when they dug that, when they pulled that car out of the lake, they found a letter in the car. And what was in the letter? It was from her boyfriend. When Susan was married to her husband, who, they had filed for divorce the month earlier, she was cheating on her husband with a guy at work. And this guy at work was the owners of the business's son. She also cheated on both her husband and the dude from work with the dude from work's father, who was the owner of the company, and she was a harlot. She was sleeping around. She didn't want to be, tied down, I guess, even though she was married with 2 kids. And the boyfriend, at the coworker, ended up writing her a letter, which she apparently took to heart, that said, not only are we breaking up because you're a harlot, but I don't want to be a father to your 2 kids. So it was never going to work anyway. I don't want kids at all, let alone to raise somebody else's kids. And also, she was at a party with him and she was kissing another dude and he didn't like that. And then he found out that she had slept with his father and she was a mess. And she didn't take to heart all of the things that she did to make this man break up with her. She only saw the sentence where it said, and plus, I really don't want to have kids, and I definitely don't want to have somebody else's kids to raise, so it's never going to work. When she received that letter, this is what happened. She took her kids out. She pushed them down her boat ramp. Like I said, they did, for the trial, do a recreation to see how long it would have taken. They said 6 minutes, over 6 minutes, for her to change her mind, to dive in, to try to save them. She didn't do any of that. 6 minutes. 6 minutes of just pure panic in these kids. I'm sure. I can't even imagine. The community was not too happy with her. For 9 days, the entire country and this small knit community was looking for these kids.
It was anything but a homecoming. Susan Smith back in Union. Her head held down, her face out of view, angering an already angry town.
She can't be warm knowing they cold and all the time knowing that they're in the bottom of this lake. There's no excuse. I would never forgive her for that.
Tight security at the courthouse, both inside and out. Authorities taking no chances with this much-hated mother. At the bond hearing for Susan Smith, the defendant never appeared. She waived her right to be heard and remained out of view. In a mob of reporters, solicitor Tommy Pope was asked about the death penalty for Susan Smith.
It goes back to evaluating the case. You know, I want to look at everything because our whole job is to get justice, you know, in this courthouse, and we need to evaluate everything.
Susan Smith will be represented now by attorney David Bruck of Columbia. He had little to say to reporters, except that Susan is now showing great remorse.
She is as heartbroken as anyone I have ever seen in my life.
There is word Susan's overnight stay at the York County Jail was anything but a hardship. A woman inmate who talked to News, but the people here in Union say Susan Smith's days are numbered. Most we talk to want the death penalty for Smith. Others want revenge.
Yeah, I say put her in her car and push her in a lake, right? Seems only fair. So you would think she would go to prison. She knows she has a possibility of parole, so she would be a model inmate. Wouldn't you think that? She'd be so heartbroken that in a mental break, she killed her children, that she would just be mourning her kids' death. Apparently that didn't happen at all. She went in there, hit the ground running. So this is her prison sheet that I found online. And here's her disciplinary sanctions. Let's go over these a little bit. Let's actually start at the latest ones and then go on to the more recent ones. Possession of narcotics, marijuana, unauthorized drug, or inhalant. That was in 2010. And another in 2010, use or possession of narcotic, marijuana, drug, or inhalant. Unauthorized drug or inhalant. In 2010, mutilation. In 2012, unauthorized use of an inmate's PIN number. So she used somebody else's PIN number to either make a phone call, or she basically fraud. She used somebody else's PIN identification number to spend some sort of money. 2015, use or possession of narcotic, marijuana, or unauthorized drug or inhalant. 2024, a couple of months ago, by the way, she contacted a victim and or witness of a crime. So I'm wondering if she was thinking, oh, my parole hearing's coming up. I wonder if she tried to contact David. I don't know. But there she is. She hasn't exactly been being a model inmate. Of course, she didn't kill anybody in jail or anything violent, but still, she's not minding her P's and Q's. So here we are to this week. We are caught up to this week where Susan Smith was first eligible for parole. And some people thought she was going to get out. I'm so happy that didn't happen, but let's watch the parole hearing together.
I have a statement that I need to read into the record, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I have received this correspondence. It is addressed to the Honorable Chair Kimberly Frederick, dated November 20th, 2024. Please be advised that I will recuse myself in the parole hearing of Susan Smith, number 221487. I was acting warden at Camille Grand Correctional Center in 1999, where inmate Smith was housed, and subsequently transferred to Leith Correctional Institution. I have determined that it is appropriate to recuse to eliminate any appearance of affecting her opportunity for parole. Respectfully, Geraldine P. Miro. Thank you, Mrs. Miro. This is accepted. If you would please exit the room. Thank you.
So basically what that was, somebody on the parole board was a prison guard at the time in 1994. So she excused herself from ruling on this one.
Thank you. We have moved her site into the lobby briefly. and 1 moment as we admit all parties.
I want you to pay attention when Susan actually speaks during this, how little she mentions the children and how much she talks about herself. That's something that I noticed when I watched it the first time.
Smith?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And Attorney Tommy Thomas, are you able to hear us?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Thank you. And there at the support site, confirm you are here in support of Ms. Susan Smith?
They're asking, can you hear? Yes, we can hear.
And you're here in support of Ms. Smith?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you all for joining. You are before the board. Please wait for the chairman to address you.
Good morning, Ms. Smith. Good morning, Mr. Thomas, and good morning to the folks at Watkins. Thank you all for being here with us today. We hope everyone is doing well. Ms. Smith, I want you to know that we have received the packet of information that Mr. Thomas's office provided to us on your behalf, and we have reviewed that packet. So thank you for submitting that in advance of this hearing today. Mr. Thomas, are you going to begin, or is your client going to begin?
Yes, ma'am, I'll be glad to begin.
Yes, sir.
Members of the board, good morning. This is Susan Smith's parole hearing. This has probably been one of the most difficult cases that I have had to put together for a parole presentation. Just lots of different factors to consider. She's been convicted of murder, of course. She has served 30 years, and she was 23 at the time that this incident occurred. She was sentenced to life with the eligibility of parole, so that's why she is here today. I'm not really going to speak much about the crime. There are some things that I want to cover, and that's not out of disrespect. We were very concerned about that. Today is Susan's parole hearing, and so today is going to be about Susan, and I want to make sure that the things that are important not only to her but to this hearing, this board, are presented, and I want to thank you in advance for your time to listen to everything. This story is really a mental health story. Some of this stuff, I've known Susan for a couple of years, and we've been working on this case. One of the things when I first met her was, of course, trying to kind of figure out some rhyme or reason as to, how these things have happened, and was able to find and have someone come to see her on a routine basis for counseling, and also to try to help her, through the daily things with Department of Corrections. As a result, that's kind of what I came to the conclusion was it is a mental health story. It's about the dangers of untreated mental health. It is about the lack of insight, the lack of diagnosis into mental health, and it's about stigmas, old stigmas. Of course, I'm 68 years old. I remember those. Hopefully they're not as bad today. Susan was hospitalized as a young teen for a short period of time for mental health treatment, and not to disparage anybody, but
How many people have mental health issues who don't murder their own children? Almost all of them. All of them except Susan Smith and maybe a few others, but that's ridiculous. Oh, well, she did have some mental issues. Well, yeah, of course she did. She murdered her children. Of course she had mental issues. That doesn't excuse the fact that she murdered her children.
was telling folks that she was in the hospital because she had a strep infection. So those were things that we didn't talk about. Those were things that were pushed under the rug, so to speak, because they were embarrassing. They showed weakness. I don't know what
they were brought up at trial. All of this stuff was brought up at trial, and the jury still found her guilty.
they showed. But they showed up and culminated in Susan as a result of a day that all of this came together and produced some horrendous results. So I think it's important to Susan, if anything comes out of this hearing, it's that people understand there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing and no reason not to reach out and seek treatment. And there is certainly no stigma that should be involved in trying to better yourself and help yourself for yourself and for others, members of the family and everyone. Susan, moving on, Susan is a high school graduate. She has some college with USC Union. She has attended International Christian College, and she's worked on an associate's degree. She's still actually working on that in Christian counseling. She has no prior record that I'm aware of. If paroled, she would be living with...
She's had 30 years and she's still working on an associate's degree. What is she doing in there? It shouldn't take somebody who has all the time in the world, by the way, to get an associate's degree. That's crazy.
With her brother, Scotty Vaughn. Scotty is here today and very briefly wanted to address the board. The job for her, she has served 30 years, so she's been in Department of Corrections for a long time, would be through vocational rehab. The PEP program is probation and parole, would know it. And we have made arrangements for aftercare with a licensed mental health professional. You have that information in the packet that's been provided to you. Some of the programs, I took the time to look at everything, to look at the programs that she's been involved in, and I'm not going to speak about all of those because you have those in the packet. The ones that I think are important and relevant today is the self-harmers group. She has attempted to commit suicide on several different occasions within the Department of Corrections.
And it's too bad she didn't succeed, isn't it? Somebody's asking who that is. They keep showing that's Susan Smith. That's Susan Smith. She's being live streamed or zoomed in or whatever from the Leith Correctional Facility or whatever it's called. That's the prison that she's at.
7 Habits, Beyond Abuse, Jumpstart, which she is a great fan of. She does not have a drug or alcohol addiction, thank goodness. She has been active on Endovo and the Cipher Works programs, Loss and Grief, healing seminars, women's empowerment, anger management.
Everybody say hi to Kafar in the chat, and don't forget to head over to his channel at 8 p.m. tonight, where I'm going to be on there talking about Chris. I'm not sure what's going on, but Kafar is going to tell me. I kind of know what's going on, but it should be a good show. It'll be fun.
Self-esteem and domestic violence workshops. I normally, and I've presented a number of parole hearings, I first started with this thinking that it had to be different than normally what I would do as far as a presentation. And I came to the conclusion maybe this week, and it doesn't. I think it is, and I will stick with what I would normally do as far as the structure of my presentation. What I always begin with the board is contributing factors because I believe that's important. We need to know what was going on, why it was going on, for the board to be able to make a informed decision about her parole expectations and her parole eligibility, and what kind of candidate she is for parole. One of the things that has jumped out at me, and I saw this last night in the media, and I know that Susan wants to speak, and because she feels like it's important to get the truth out there, is this is not about the love for another man. I saw it on local TV about how this was all about another man and him not wanting children. From what I have been able to determine, that is just not true. I have spoken with David Bruck, who was a defense.
Baloney, sir. Baloney. It was in the letter. It was in the letter that she tried to bury at the bottom of the lake with the corpses of her children. Okay. I'm getting a little heated. Not only was that letter in the car, you know what else was in the car? Her wedding album to David, when she got married to David. her wedding dress. Everything except for David, everything that had to do with David, the 2 children, her whole life with David was in the trunk of that car, along with that letter from the boyfriend that said he doesn't want to raise another man's children. So what was strapped in the car seats in the back seat? Her 2 children. So this, sir, is bullshit.
Defense attorney on a number of different occasions. David has been a great source of information in regards to Susan. He indicated to me that this was a theory of a motive by the state. That's where we think it developed. However, this was never proven at trial, and it was actually abandoned by the state. So, but it has stuck. And I just wanted to, I know it's important to her to bring this to your attention. The contributing factors in this case were multiple stress points. They converged all at the same time. And we are certainly not trying to say anything about, you know, the horrificness of this crime. It is, and she was found guilty. But we're trying to kind of maybe present to the parole board how these things developed and how it's possible that something like this could happen. One of the things that has been important in her life, and I think is a huge contributor to this crime, is the suicide of her dad at age 6. Horrific, just horrific. And she blamed herself. How could he leave me? And I think it sets the stage for the beginning of some serious mental health issues, some serious depression, which just kind of culminates and continues to snowball. And the lack of, you know, recognition and treatment for this issue with her dad. I mean, it was like the old stigma of, you know, we just tough through these terrible situations, and, you know, that's how it's done. It's not done that way. There were some attempts to get some sort of psychological help for her after a couple of suicide attempts, and never went anywhere. She was the child. The adults in the picture did not, can't blame them, I think it was the times, did not seek and try to understand the depth and the significance of this and what it was going to produce at a later date. Severe depression, potentially depression after the birth of her last child, which was also undiagnosed.
Yeah.
And
by the way, not only was this undiagnosed, but everybody who knew her in real life said that she was a happy person. She was out sleeping around, going to parties, drinking, carrying on, all of that stuff. Nobody said, oh, that's Susan. She was so depressed because her dad killed herself at the age of 6. Not a single person that knew her said that.
That postpartum depression that existed in a severe situation. Just in culmination, I apologize for reading something to the board, but I've looked at so much material, and if I can beg the board's attention for a few minutes, I would like to say this and read this because I think it summarizes everything that I've been talking about and everything that Susan wanted to talk about what happened. She said to me, and this was not in preparation for parole, I found this buried in a bunch of documents that had been provided to me. And it is from Susan. And she says, I believe this is what happened to me on October 25th, 1994. I lost touch with reality. My thoughts were not rational nor logic. I don't think I understood that if I allowed this car to go into the lake, that I would never see my children again. The finality of it was not real to me because my thoughts were so screwed up at the time. My mind, I thought, was doing what was best for them. I knew Jesus would take better care of them than I could. It was truly a moment of insanity. There are no easy explanations and not much understanding. How can you make sense of something that is senseless? And I think that shows the remorse that she's had. She's lived with this for forever since this thing. When I first met her and I would go and see her, remorse is difficult. You know, that's something with the parole hearings that I've presented for years, is to how do you demonstrate remorse? People do it in different manners. And I always look for that. I always ask my clients, you know, and look for the remorse. I could see the pain on her face. It was so difficult. Talking about things were extremely difficult. And not because she didn't want to talk about them, it's just because it was so hard to talk about them. So I think that she is truly remorseful for what happened. And I think she would do anything in the world to bring these children back. But moving on to the next consideration in this presentation is really changes. What changes has she made in herself in prison? One of the things I think is important is that she has no prior history. Nothing that would lead up to believe that someone would be capable of a crime of this nature.
Do you guys want to know what she's been doing in prison? I mean, we read her record, but do you want to know what else she's been doing? She slept with the guards. She has sugar daddies who put money into her commissary. Several men who apparently are just in love with Susan Smith, which is insane to me. We talk about hybristophiliacs. Usually they're women who are in love with men who are in prison for horrific crimes. Susan Smith has men who are hybristophiliacs who are in love with her and are sending her money and are promising to support her when she gets out. When she gets paroled, they're going to take her in and pay for everything and support her. It's crazy. Also, she got in trouble for taking money from a news source for doing phone interviews, which she's not allowed to do. You're not allowed to profit from the crime that you committed. But there was some news company who was wanting to get the inside scoop, which isn't everybody, and they were putting money into her commissary, more than enough to pay for the phone calls. Like, they're allowed to pay for the phone calls or whatever, but it was enough for her to get to, it was more than that. That's what she's been doing in prison. She's not sorry. She's manipulative.
Which I think is also indicative of what their risk is if the board was inclined to allow her to participate on parole. I don't think that was as a risk, and I think that's what our counselor, who had seen her on a regular basis for a number of years, also indicated that it was very low risk. She's been IRC chairman within the institution. That means something. You're voted on by your peers, and it is an honor to be in that position. She has been a math tutor in education. She's helped numerous inmates obtain their GED. She's been in the character arts program, prison fellowship, which I think is extremely important to her. She's much stronger in her faith than she has ever been. And that is a comfort for her. It's something that she enjoys. It's something that is extremely important. Jumpstart, good program. She's been in that program. She would actually like to go to Jumpstart if the board would consider her for parole. He has been out of the program for a couple of years, and that would be, she'd have to do some other things for that to happen. So that's why we have chosen that she would go and live with her brother. Good, solid individual in the community, willing to help her in any manner, and one thing I've noticed from the family and friends is that we mourn with her the pain of this crime, but we still love her and we're there for her. So she has that for her. And
oh my gosh, I'm going to have to give them 2 because I was just talking with the mic muted. Thank you very much, Screwed Up Rebellion. Sorry, Screwed Up Texas, for the super chat. They appreciate it. The terrorist here and the angel, the terrorist and the angel appreciate it. I'm going to give them each 2 because I did just talk like 3 whole sentences with my mic muted. You want to catch? Yep, there you go. She can catch. One more. There you go. You want to take bets on if Xena can catch? Probably not. We'll hand it to her. There's one. There's one more. Thank you so much. I appreciate the support. You guys are the best. Saffron asks, do you guys believe, or do you think that this guy believes what he is saying? And I say, absolutely not. I think he's just doing his job. He might. I don't know. It's hard to tell with this one. I'm not sure. I don't think he believes what he's saying. I think that he has a job to do. He's hired to do it. He's just doing his job.
which is a great resource if the board was going to consider her for parole. One of the other things I've noticed is giving back to the community, arts and crafts. She's made arts and crafts that she's donated to charity. She's helped St. Jude's. She's helped staff members. She said that an insight into what's going on with her, stand on her own 2 feet, not to be influenced by others, live a better life, think before acting. And, you know, other people are affected by your decisions and your actions, and the importance of mental health. I think that comes back into what we're talking about. It's not an excuse, but it is certainly some indication or maybe explanation as to what was going on. The goals, and this is my final area for my presentation, is that I don't think she'll ever be able to forgive herself. That is something that she struggles with forever. I don't think that creates a danger to anyone, except particularly maybe a danger to her. Her medications, her mental health medications, have been balanced well by the Department of Corrections. I think she thinks as clear now as she ever has. I think that she is able to establish goals and what she would like to do in her life. And I think on the top of that list is to give back and to try to help others. She said that no one should suffer in the way that in their treatment. There is help available, and she wants to help to get out and maybe help to promote that that concept that there's help out there. You just have to seek it. And she said she'd like to live a quiet life. She would welcome supervision if granted parole, and maybe that is the best thing about this situation. From that type of situation is that if she's granted parole, it is for life, and she will be supervised and she will be monitored by the Department of Probation and Parole Services for the rest of her life. She said that she would welcome that, because that is another pillar of stability that is available for her that she can reach out to. And she said that that would be a vital and instrumental part of her life. She loves animals. She said that would like to find a job helping with dogs and cats. I often ask my clients,
I don't trust her around dogs and cats. Look what she did when she was trusted with children. I don't trust her to be in charge of dogs and cats. I mean, absolutely not.
if you could choose and you could make these wishes come true, what would you like to do? You know, what is the job that you truly would enjoy? Often that's different than the job that we have. And I think that job for Susan is the care for animals and being involved in.
Okay, let me know in the chat. Would you trust Susan Smith to be in charge of this one or that one? Would you? I'm just telling you, I would not hire Susan Smith as my pet sitter. I would not trust her with Ava and Xena. Not in a million years. She literally strapped her children into their car seats and rolled them into a lake. I would not. She's the type of person that would put puppies into a garbage bag and throw them in a river. That's who Susan Smith is. I would not trust her as far as I could throw her. And I have a bad back. I can't throw anybody very far at all.
In that area of help. In closing, I think that...
I don't think Kafar was here for the part. The jury was not allowed to know when they chose life in prison. They were not allowed to know that in 1994 in South Carolina, life in prison did not mean life in prison. Life in prison in 1994 in South Carolina meant life 30 to life. So life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years, which is what we're watching now, her first parole hearing. And all of them got off of jury duty and did interviews. Well, the ones that did anyway, every single one of them said, if we had known that life did not mean life, we would have chosen the death penalty. But they thought that life in prison would be a worse punishment for her because she'd have to sit there for her entire life and think about what she did. And boy, that was a mistake.
She has indicated to me that her desire is to make her life mean something, something other than the things that she has done, to make a positive impact in her life. I talked to somebody, I've spoken to a number of people, and I've spoken to one person that told me, they were at the trial, and they said that their impression of Susan was that she was living to die.
Yeah.
I didn't really understand that.
I wouldn't trust her to feed Kafar's fish Steve, honestly. I think that if she was left alone with Steve for a week and said, you have to feed this fish every day, she couldn't do it. Absolutely not. She'd probably let it go into a pond.
I think the more that I have been talking to her and preparing this case, that maybe I do. I think that has been Susan's life, is living to die for the things that she has done. And I think that what she's asking today is to ask the board to consider a parole for her, so maybe she can make something positive out of a horrific situation. I want to thank you for your time. I know I've taken a lot of time today. I would just ask if you would please consider her for release.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas, and we appreciate all
Yes,
your
ma'am.
comments.
Thank you.
And again, thank you for the very detailed packet that you presented. Ms. Smith,
Yes, ma'am.
what would you like to tell us today?
Here comes the BS.
First of all, I want to say how very sorry I am.
Crocodile tears.
It's okay, Susan. Just talk with us.
I know that what I did was horrible. And I would give anything if I could go back and change it. And I love Michael and Alice with all my heart.
Influence of drugs or alcohol the night that you murdered your children?
No, ma'am, I was not.
Your attorney talked about working with mental health. Is that helpful to you?
Ma'am?
Mr. Thomas,
I hear you.
Mr. Thomas talked about the fact that you were working with mental health, and my question is that helpful to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that something that you would be willing to continue with on the outside if you were granted parole?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Smith, your crime took a lot of resources from the law enforcement community. What, if anything, would you say to the folks who worked so hard to find your children if you had the opportunity to speak to them today?
Is anybody in the chat falling for this bullshit? Is anybody at all falling for this?
That I'm sorry that I put them through that. I really, really am. And I'm especially sorry to the drivers that I had to find them. I wish I could take that back. I really do. I didn't lie to get away with it. I really didn't. I was just scared. I didn't know how I could tell the people that loved them that they would never see them again. I didn't know how I could tell David he couldn't see his son again. And I'm sorry. I don't know. I know that's not enough. I know it's not, but I don't know. I know that's just how my words, but they come from my heart. They really do.
Right. One of the things that we review is your institutional record, and you've had some infractions throughout the years.
Here we go. Let's talk about your institutional records. I don't remember if they get into the men that she's courting outside of the prison, offering to take care of her for the rest of her life. But let's get into those institutional records, Susan.
Some involving the use of some narcotics. Do you have any issues with drugs or alcohol at this point?
I don't. No, ma'am, I don't.
And you had a recent disciplinary infraction just a few months ago. So why should this board think that if we grant you parole that you're going to go out and follow the rules and the laws of society if you do not follow the rules within the institution?
That is a very good question. I'd love to hear this answer. Go ahead, Susan.
Well, this last infraction, I was trusted the wrong person. This lady contacted me, and I trusted her. I thought she was going to do a documentary on mental health, and I really am not guilty of what they charged me with, and I have filed an appeal on that charge. And as far as your question, I've never been in trouble before, and the things that I have been found guilty of in here have been just stupidity. I know I made a lot of mistakes in here, and I have learned from them. And before this last infraction had been 10 years, because I grew up and I knew that I needed to stop making dumb decisions. and I did. I knew it was time to grow up and do the right thing. I just made a lot of dumb choices and mistakes in here.
She slept with, I think, 2 different prison guards, at least one that did an interview. I think it was 2, though, which doesn't show up on her records because technically they were the ones breaking the law, not her. But from the guy that was interviewed, she was seducing him, which I kind of believe it. Although you're a prison guard, what are you doing, dude? You know.
So I know I've learned from those mistakes.
What do you feel is the most
And I'm not
important
gonna
thing
do
that
that.
you've learned while you've been incarcerated?
Ma'am?
What do you think is the most important thing that you have learned while you have been incarcerated?
That people are important, that forgiveness and love, that family is important, and
What is the most important thing that you've learned in the last 30 years while you were incarcerated? That forgiveness is important, Miss Parole Board leader person. Are you kidding me right now? Are you kidding me? She should have said the sanctity of life is important. She should have said a number of things. A number of things she could have said there. Not forgiveness is important. That's an insane answer. That's a self-absorbed answer.
decisions we make not just affect us, they affect the people that we love. And not to take things or people for granted.
All right. Is there anything else that you would like to tell us today that wasn't in your packet or that has not already been said?
I would just like to say that I am a Christian and God is a big part of my life, and I know He has forgiven me, and it is by His grace and mercy that, and I have a lot of faith and I live by that every day. And I just ask that you show that same kind of mercy as well. And I guess, yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions
Okay,
from
thank
the
you.
board? Folks at Watkins, I need each of you to please state your name for the record and your relationship to Miss Smith. Ma'am, can we begin with you, please?
Just so you know, the audio on these two is horrible. And if it's too bad, just let me know and I'll fast forward through this part. These are friends of hers, I guess, testifying in this hearing. The audio is really bad. Just a warning.
Ma'am, state your name and your relationship. What? Ma'am, state your name and your relationship.
I did not. Is it I?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Ann Curry, and I'm a long-term friend and supporter of Susan.
Thank you, Ms. Curry. And sir, your name, please?
And state your name, sir, and your relationship. State your name and your relationship.
Okay, I'm the Reverend Tom Curry. I've known Susan briefly when she was a teenager, when I was called in for one session each, counseling about two different matters, once by her teacher and once by Susan. And I testified at her trial, which in the sentencing phase, and I have kept up with her by writing her weekly for the last 30 years. I did this because I felt that she needed somebody to remind her that her whole life was not caught up in that one experience, but that she could put her life back together, because her life was in such turmoil when all this happened. And I think she's a different person now. And that's what I want to talk about when I get a chance to say a word about it. I have new hearing aids, and I can't always hear your questions, but my mind's fine, and I'm just a retired Presbyterian minister alone.
Well, thank you, Mr. Curry. We appreciate that, and you're welcome. You're welcome to make your statement that you would like to make right now.
All right. Okay, I want to start with her trial.
Mr. Curry, let me interrupt you before you get too far into that. We are not here to retry her case in any form or fashion. That is not the purpose of the parole board. We are here to determine if she is a good candidate for parole, and if so, we would set the parameters of that parole. But in no way can we discuss the trial or retry her case. She was convicted of 2 counts of murder. If you'd like to speak to anything outside of that, you're welcome to.
Okay, now, I just want to say 2 things about the trial. I only went to the trial for one morning to testify in the sentencing phase against the death penalty. And the 2 things that I picked up from the trial itself was, one, a prison guard who came, a female, who said that she had not seen a criminal as remorseful as Susan was, and that she felt her remorse for what she had done was genuine. And the second thing was one of the jurors. The prosecuting attorney was pushing hard for the death penalty, and the jury voted not, and they voted life, as y'all have already mentioned. But one of the jurors said that she felt like that it would be harder for Susan to live with what she had done than to die. And I thought that was a true statement. And it certainly has been for Susan during her 30 years in prison, and especially the first part of her time that she was there. It's been easy. She attempted suicide several times, and she had a couple of run-ins where guards were able to use her for their pleasure, and that's a bad situation, and was dealt with, and she was not the only prisoner involved.
All right, thank you, Mr. Curry. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your comments. Mrs. Curry, do you wish to say anything?
Yes, please, and thank you for letting us speak. I just want to say that I really think Susan is ready for parole now. She has surrounded herself with a caring support community that advises and encourages her, and she listens to them. As Mr. Thomas said, she has done everything she can to prepare herself to live outside of prison, in taking courses, in learning how to teach, in caring about other people, in working on teams and projects together. And thirdly, as both of them have said, she is not the young woman who went into prison 30 years ago. She is much stronger. She has grieved, is still grieving, will always grieve. But she's learned from it. And she has experienced paralyzing remorse and survived. Today, she wants to begin to rebuild her life, and I hope you'll give her that chance.
I want to say one more word. For the last 2 years, now remember, I wrote her for 30 years, once a week, pretty close to every week. And that is, the last 2 years, I've ended my letters by saying, Susan, you live in a needy place. Share God's love with those around you and with your other contacts, but always live in hope for your own future. There is a time when you will live on your own again, past prison. And that's what I hope y'all will give her the chance to do at this time. She is a very different person from what she was 30 years ago. And I've probably been in contact with her talking about spiritual things, but also just trying to enlarge her life by telling her about what's going on in the world around her and in the Curry family. She's the same age as one of my children.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Curry. We appreciate all of your comments, sir. We appreciate all of your comments and all of the information. Mr. Thomas, anything in closing, sir?
No, ma'am. Nothing further than I really would ask the board to take the time to consider Susan's request for parole. I do believe that if we look at insight into things that we've done, and as far as things that we need to do to get out of the Department of Corrections and to try to make our life worthwhile or mean something, I think Susan is at that point. And I just again want to thank you for listening today, and hope you would consider our presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Thank you, Ms. Smith, and thank you,
Yes,
Mr. and
ma'am.
Mrs. Curry. We certainly appreciate all of you joining us today. If you all will please exit the rooms, we will have an answer for you later today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, before we get to the opposition, somebody brought up, Smith W. brought up that nobody finds Jesus in prison. They just get a Bible. Big difference. I don't believe that at all. I believe that people do find Jesus in prison. I believe that they're few and far between, but I don't think it's zero. I don't think it's zero people. I think that Susan Smith definitely did not find Jesus in prison, but I do believe that some people do.
One moment as the room clears. And the room is clear, and we do have additional testimony facilitated by the Office of Victim Services.
Please wait as all victims join from Central Office.
I'm glad that they don't make the people who are in opposition to Susan Smith and the people who are pro Susan Smith sit in the same room together. That's good.
Good afternoon. You all come on in. Thank you. Can you move just a little further around so we can get everyone in? Thank you so much.
The gentleman sitting down in the blue tie is David Smith, the boy's father. And sitting next to him is
Thank
his
you.
current wife.
Good afternoon. You all are here for the parole consideration case of Susan Smith. Is that correct?
Yes.
We are so very, very sorry for the circumstances that brought you all to be a part of this hearing today. But we cannot tell you how much we appreciate you joining us and being here with us today. Thank you so much. Before we begin, I do need each of you to please state your name for the record and your interest in this case. Sir, can we begin with you, please?
Stand up.
You don't have to stand up. You do whatever's comfortable for you.
I'm David Smith. I'm the father of Michael and Alex.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
I'm Tiffany Smith. I am David Smith's wife.
I'm Rebecca Smith French. I'm the aunt of Michael and Alex.
I'm Savannah Smith, and I am David's daughter, Michael and Alex's sister.
Austin Hughes. I'm a friend of the victim family.
I'm Tommy Pope. I was the solicitor in the original trial.
I'm Kevin Brackett. I'm the 16th Circuit solicitor currently and was a prosecutor on the original case.
Laura Hudson with the Crime Victims Council.
Mark Reynolds. I'm with the victim's family.
Billy Bailey, personal friend.
Kathy Bailey, personal friend.
Jeff Bailey, Sheriff, Union County.
Scott Cooper, Sheriff's Office, Union County.
Michael Cogdill, documentarian.
Rita Swan, aunt to Michael and Alex.
Doug Smith, Dave's uncle.
Thank you all, and again, we are so very, very sorry for the circumstances, but thank you for being here with us today. We do have the facts of the offense, and we've heard from Ms. Smith. Now we want to hear from you all, whether you were for or against parole. And if anyone would like to make a statement, you are certainly welcome to do so. Mr. Smith, would you like to begin or would you like to conclude at the end? It's completely up to you.
Conclude at the end, please.
Okay. Who would like to speak first?
I'll speak first, please, ma'am.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
So I'm Tommy Pope. I was the 16th Circuit Solicitor, and this was a death penalty case. And the reason it was a death penalty case, you know, the solicitor has that discretion, but the reason it was a death penalty case, you know the facts and circumstances, and I just felt strongly that had the black man with the toboggan committed the crime, people would expect a death penalty. If David Smith had committed the crime, people would expected the death penalty. And I thought it was very important that the portrayal that Susan Smith showed, that she be treated the same. We knew it was going to be difficult. We knew there was a likelihood of not achieving the death penalty. But I think it's important to note the jury at the time actually asked, what did life mean? And you may be aware, but in that time, life did not mean life. Life became life in 96. We tried the case in 95. So the jury was asked, and the judge was required to instruct the jury that you take life and death in its plain and usual meaning. Carrying that forward, the jury showed her mercy. The jury gave her a life sentence. But one of the jurors, or more of the jurors, after the fact, and speaking to the media, said that they believed the life sentence was the greater punishment because they believed that Susan should have to reflect on what she did to Michael and Alex, that she should have to spend the rest of her life thinking about what she'd done. The two fallacies in that logic that the jury could not have known are, number one, obviously we're here today, so life did not mean life. Number two, and you have it before you, Susan's conduct from the day she rolled the kids in the lake. The defense claimed a botched suicide, but she was able to save herself. She was able to blame a black guy. She wasn't wet. She wasn't injured when she runs to the house and concocts this story. Susan has always focused on Susan. I will believe to the end of my time that Susan made a horrible, horrible choice to choose a man over her family. I said the boys were in the car, her wedding gown was in the car, her wedding album was in the car. She thought in a nice package she could roll that away. If she could have put David in the car, he would have been there too. In a nice package, she could roll that away and start this new life with this other man. And she led everyone on, including David, for 9 horrible days. And so, as you look at her conduct in prison, whether it was a relationship with guards, the social media, the attention, the conduct recently with the publisher, Susan, you know, she's got people outside. I'm sure you've heard from them that want to take care of her. Susan has always focused on what's best for Susan. And so the evidence that you have before you, I think, tells clearly that she has not focused on Michael and Alex. She only has and continues to focus on herself. And so on behalf of this family, on behalf of justice and the justice with this case, it's not about her behavior or what she would do when getting out, but I know one of your criteria is the nature of the crime and whether the punishment is there. And I would submit for the crime she committed, the action she committed, that punishment has not been achieved yet. And so I would ask you to deny parole. Now, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Solicitor Pope. Appreciate it. Would anyone else like to speak?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Madam Chairman, Chair Lady, and members of the board, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. I was on the prosecution team that handled the prosecution along with Solicitor Pope and Speaker Pope now, who you just heard from. I wanted to bring to you a couple of vignettes from the case to help bring this alive for you. In the course of preparing for today, I've gone back over the case. I've reviewed the file. I've pulled some of the evidence out, which is in a closet just off my office. Evidence like the note that was written to Susan Smith by her boyfriend, the man she was cheating on her husband with, who told her in the note that he could not be with her anymore because he didn't want children, and that they had no long-term future because he didn't want children. And then 1 week later, she's rolling her car down the ramp at John D. Long Lake with her 2 children strapped into the back. She betrayed her husband when she cheated on him, and she betrayed her children against the laws of nature when she should have been sworn to protect those children. She betrayed them when she left them in the seat and rolled that car down, and she was not trying to commit suicide. She was trying to change her life. She wanted to kill her old life and start anew. She was wearing a sweatshirt that the man who she was cheating with had given to her when she was on TV 2 hours later after claiming that a black man in a toboggan had carjacked her and spirited her 2 children away. How many black men in red Mazdas got pulled over across the country because they were looking for those 2 kids and they were looking for this fictitious man that didn't exist, purely a figment of her imagination? I was on the banks of John D. Long Lake, standing there with about 40 or 45 people, 50 people, as the tow truck from Greer's Wrecker launched its line into the water where divers hooked it up to the car and pulled it out. Total silence as that car emerged from the dark water. Everybody sitting there hoping and praying that maybe it was a different car. Maybe it was a wrong car. Maybe the kids weren't in there. Not a word was said. It was one of the most haunting memories of my life, and it will live with me forever. And that's the last point I want to make. You're going to hear from this man, and he's going to tell you what this did to him. I can't begin to describe it. I sat in court and listened to him testify, and it was heart-wrenching as he described that his hopes and dreams for the future were destroyed that night when she killed their 2 children. This didn't just traumatize him. It traumatized Union. It traumatized South Carolina. The entire country was in the grips of her lie and her treachery. The entire country. This was a global sensation. People were fixated on this. They're not the only victims. And on behalf of the community that I represent now, I don't believe she should ever be released from jail until the last person alive who remembers Michael and Alex is dead. And that will not be in her lifetime. She should never be released, and she should not be released now. His hopes and dreams were dashed. I hope you dash hers today and every 2 years hereafter.
Thank you so much.
Well said, Mr. Prosecutor, and the one before that, too, who was also on the prosecution team. This did affect the entire community of Union and Union County. But not only that, is it rippled throughout the whole country. I can remember praying about these boys in that week that they were the 9 days that they were missing at school. I went to a Catholic school, and we stopped and had a moment of silence and prayed that these boys would be found alive. And I did not go to school anywhere near South Carolina. I was in school in Chicago. That's how much this gripped the nation. These 2 boys being carjacked and taken gripped the nation. It was... Everyone was a victim of her lies and treachery, which was a great line by the prosecutor. I might change the title of this episode to Lies and Treachery, because that was exactly what it was.
Does anyone else wish to speak?
Okay.
You're welcome to stay seated if you're more comfortable, whatever's best for you.
Great, thank you. I'm going to read what I wrote. Okay, it's easy, if you don't mind. When Susan murdered Michael and Alex, she altered the course of my life and my family's life forever. Having grown up with 3 older brothers, Susan was like the sister I never had. I was a teenage mom of just 16, so I looked up to her and even admired her. I thought she was the best mother to the boys, and I strived to be just like her. I would even leave my own daughter with her while I attended night school. Susan betrayed us and took the lives of those boys and then lied about it. For days, when she did this, she destroyed a trust in me that I've never regained. And as a result, I do not develop close relationships with others easily, in particular females. Anxiety and depression have plagued my life for years. I push it away during spring and summer as best possible, but it always creeps back during back up around Alex's birthday when it rolls around in August, because I know Michael's won't be far behind in October. And then the anniversary of their death on the 25th. Because in my mind, I always refer to this period of time as the sad months. Throughout my career, the majority of any time missed at work is around Michael and Alex's birthdays and the anniversary of their death. I stay in bed and sleep to deal with the depression. It's just easier this way, or at least it seems to be. Something as simple as taking up a new hobby turned into a nightmare for me last year. My boyfriend and I decided to take scuba diving lessons. I geared up with all the equipment, face mask on, oxygen tank on my back, stepped off the side of the pool into 15 feet of water and immediately sank to the bottom from all the weight I was carrying. Normally you'd remember to breathe and begin to ascend as I had studied for all the weeks leading up to that point, but nothing prepared me for dropping into a body of water and the feeling of being weighted down, unable to breathe, and seeing Michael and Alex's face. I immediately panicked, ripping off my face mask, sucking in water, and not being able to come to the surface from all the weight I was carrying. I was drowning, and I knew in that moment that was the closest I'd ever come to knowing what my nephews had endured and how horrific and scared their last moments had to have been. Something as simple as taking up a new hobby was yet one more thing Susan was taken from me. In over 25 years, I have found myself finding comfort going to the cemetery where the boys are buried, beside our older brother. I go there often and I will tidy up their graves, where people have left trinkets or gifts, and I talk to them. I go there when I'm happy. I go there when I'm upset. Rainy days, sunny days, cold days and hot days, it doesn't matter. It brings me peace just being there. But as a result, I'm not able to bring myself to move away from Union County, because now I don't want to leave them. We have missed Michael and Alex's kindergarten graduations, numerous birthdays, birthday parties, summer vacations, Easters, along with annual Easter egg hunts at Meemaw's, Thanksgivings, Christmases, football, soccer, baseball games, proms, high school graduations, possible marriages, and births of their own children. We don't know, because they never had a chance. They never had a chance to live a life of their own. Susan took that from them. She took that from us all. And now she wants a chance to be free after only serving 30 years. No. Life should mean life. I'm respectfully asking you to please deny her request for parole. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I apologize if I get a little bit emotional. I drove down from Detroit on Monday night, which was Halloween before of that week, and a young man, middle-aged man then, I'm an old man now, but the boys never got to. As Becky said, they missed a lot. They missed their life. Today they would be in their 30s. David would probably be a granddad. The boys were still here. I took my sister out to the lake yesterday, and it's a beautiful drive out there. I was just thinking, all that time she had time to change her mind, to stop and turn around and not go through with it, but she did. And then the boys were gone. A year later, I came back down for the trial. Tommy Pope did a good job that proved that she was guilty. During the sentencing trial, they came back and recommended life. Tommy had argued for the death penalty. The family was for death penalty. They come back and recommended life. But we said, well, we'll live with it. You know, she'll have to live with it every day for the rest of her life. So we were satisfied with life.
but we do not want a parole. We're against any parole for her. And then two other items going back 30 years. The Friday morning after apologize. But the Friday morning after, David, his dad, my brother's wife, and I, the four of us, were sitting at Holcomb Funeral Home in Union and discussing the funeral arrangements. David asked to see the boys, and Mr. Holcomb had a funny look on his face, and he said, "Mr. Smith, could I see you?" So we went out, and he said, "You know, your nephew can't see the boys." And he told me why. He said, "You know, the boys were in the water for 9 days." So I went back and told David, I said, "You know, it's better that you don't see the boys." And I think deep down he understood why. The next day, Saturday, three of us, David, his dad, and I went out to the Bougainville United Methodist Church Cemetery and to look where the boys are going to be buried. And David's brother, Danny, who had died 3 years earlier, was buried there. David wanted his boys buried next to his brother, their uncle. But the way the cemetery is laid out, there was no room for the boys to be put next to Danny. So I found the cemetery custodian and asked him if it were possible to move Danny. And he said, "Well, yes, if that's what the family wants, we can move Danny." So I went back and saw my brother. Said, "You know, David wants the boys to be next to their uncle. Would you have a problem if we moved Danny?" And he said no. So if you go out to the cemetery, you'll find that Danny and the boys are side by side.
Does anyone else wish to speak?
Yes, I'll go, please.
Yes, ma'am.
So as David's wife, I have stood by him for the last 30 years and watched his pain, his suffering, his dark days that you cannot imagine. It's been hard as a loving wife to stand back and watch him suffer the pain that he has gone through. To not want to get out of bed some days. To not be able to get out of bed. Because the pain was so much for him. And for 30 years we had thought this day would never come. But yet here we are. I don't feel that it's time for her to be let out because she took 2 lives. She didn't just take 1. She took 2 precious little boys that we haven't been able to watch grow up. And as Becky stated earlier, all the things that we've missed out on because of them not being here, all the things they missed out on growing up in and doing. And for her to be in prison for the last 30 years, you would think that she would have thought about what she's done. She would have said, I'm sorry. But she hasn't said, I'm sorry. She hasn't even called him. She hasn't even told him she was sorry. Much less the world. For 9 days, all I can think about is how much she lied and manipulated everybody. The whole world. I watched it and believed her myself. I wanted her to be telling the truth. But to be betrayed by her lies. And that just makes me feel like if she could do that then, whatever she's told you today, I'm sure were probably lies as well. Because she has shown in her last 30 years what she does in prison. She's all about herself. It's all about what she can do to make her life better. And Michael and Alex didn't get a chance at life. They were forced the death penalty. She took that from them. The lives of this family has been forever changed. It caused us to be a little overprotective of our now daughter. A little bit more than we probably should have been. Because we were afraid something might happen to her. It's changed the way we look at life. It's changed the way that we look at everybody. Who can I trust? For a long time, I didn't trust a lot of people. I had to be careful, around certain people. I didn't know if I could trust them or not. All because of her lies. So to help give this family some peace, it would be best if Susan stayed behind bars and stay in prison for the rest of her life. I respectfully ask you to keep her in. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anyone else wish to speak for Mr. Smith? Sheriff, anyone?
Keep in mind that this family has to go through this from now on every 2 years for the rest of her life. Every 2 years, she's eligible for parole from now until the end of time, until the end of her time. This next person speaking is the boy's little sister. She was born after they were gone, but I can't imagine knowing that I could have had 2 older brothers that I was deprived of. This one's heartbreaking. And when you watch the dad speak, if you think it's bad now, just wait.
Give me. Most of what I have to say is going to be pretty redundant. But primarily I would just like to focus on, since I came after the fact, what I had stolen from me was 2 older brothers, the good and the bad of having older siblings. And I now try to use my life as a way to live for them. And growing up, I didn't quite understand it my whole life, but when I finally did, I felt like I had witnessed it, like I was there. The pain that not only was caused to me in like a domino effect, but what I have seen firsthand with my father, my aunt, and our whole hometown. We can no longer say that we're from Union County without Susan's actions being brought up. And just for the sake of all of us and our whole community, I ask that you deny her request.
Mr. Smith, you're welcome to stay seated if you want to come in.
Madam Chairman, members of the It's been a tough 30 years. I'm not here to speak about what she's done in prison. You all have the records and accounts of all that. I'm just here to advocate on Michael and Alex's behalf and as their father. You know, God gives us free choice. And she made free choice that night to end her life. This wasn't a tragic mistake. It wasn't something that she didn't mean to do. She purposely meant to end her life. I never have felt any remorse from her for it. She's never expressed any to me. I've never seen it on paper. No, she, as you've heard, she changed my life for the rest of my life that night. Some for the better, some for the worse, but what she did, not only to Michael and Alex, she came pretty close to causing me to end my life because of the grief that she brought upon me. But thankfully she didn't. I understand back in 95 that through the state's law, life imprisonment, 30 years to life. And now that's different, but at that time, that's what counts. I understand that. But ultimately, to me, that's only 15 years per child. Her own children. It's just not enough. So I'm asking that you please deny her parole today. And hopefully in the future, but specifically today. Not let her out. I miss them very much. And I love them very much. And I will be here every 2 years going forward to ensure that your death doesn't go in vain. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Smith. Again, please know how very, very sorry this board is to all of you for all the pain that this crime caused you. But we sincerely appreciate you all being here with us today. Thank you very much. And thank you for the reminder with the picture of Alex and Michael. They were beautiful children. So thank you for reminding us of that today. We wish you the very best. And if no one else has anything else that they would like to say, if you all will exit with these ladies over here, we'll have an answer for you shortly. Thank you so much for being here.
it is.
As a reminder, Mrs. Mira did recuse herself. Ms. Susan Smith is denied parole. The vote is unanimous. Numbers 1 and 6. Thank you.
Thank you. The time now is 12:51 p.m. We will pause our recording. Ms. Hunter.
So that's it. She was denied parole. The end. For another 2 years. We'll see how it goes in 2 years from now. Thanks for sticking around and watching the whole parole hearing with me. I thought it was important to hear everything that the family had to say about what she did to their lives that night. She claims it was a momentary lapse that, her first story was that she was going to commit suicide, and she ended up jumping out of the car because she couldn't go through with it. But then she left her kids in there. Hold on. Instead of putting her foot on the brake, as she was gonna commit suicide and drive herself into the lake, instead of putting her foot on the brake, she jumped out of the car. And the car kept rolling, and she tried to stop it, but really all she had to do was step on the brake. That story changed to it was a momentary lapse, some sort of psychotic break, and then she regretted it immediately. I don't think she regrets it to this day. I think what she regrets is getting caught. I don't think she's actually remorseful at all for what she did, and I feel so horrible that because of the laws, the way they were in South Carolina when this trial was happening, that this family has to go through this every 2 years for the rest of forever. They shouldn't have to do this. They shouldn't have to do this. They should have informed the jury what life in prison actually meant, that it was actually life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Because, like I said, if you ask the jurors if they'd have known that, they would have given her the death penalty, and we wouldn't even be probably talking about Susan Smith today. But instead, we have to revisit this every 2 years on the off chance possibility that whoever ends up on this parole board lets her out. That's the show. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. I appreciate the super chats that came through. Don't forget, at 8 o'clock tonight, I will be on with Kafar talking about some First Amendment auditor that some stuff's going on with. So if you're into that sort of thing, join us over there. Don't forget to subscribe. If you're still here watching now and you're not subscribed, what are you doing with your life? It's free. Hit the subscribe button. Why not? The like button is also free. Hit that. And please join me not only later tonight on Kapro's channel, but Wednesday for Booze and Body Cams. And again, next Sunday at 4:30 Eastern. We will see you then. Thanks for coming, everybody. Bye.
I can't understand what you're saying. We're late stage in the catacombs. Shuffling a single card today. Broken table trying to play some ping pong. It's not subtle when we celebrate a magazine with the pages torn. My body cracks, knees buckling. I got a bad case of brain fog. Said I got a bad case of brain fog. So I'ma take my butt home. So I'ma take my butt home.